Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, may I have your attention, please? Are you ready to engage in a mind-blowing experience and hear talks about life, technology, entertainment, and business? The next episode of HIPTHER Talks starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Good day, good evening, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of HIPTHER Talks. Today we're having with us Zsu Csiszar, founder of Maisonera Home Makeovers. Welcome, Zsu. Thank you for taking our invitation and for making the time to join us.
So, thank you for having me.
For all the audience here, let's shed some light on your background a little bit. Who is Zsu? What you're doing? What's the deal with the home makeovers?
So I'm Zsu, and I am a decorator / interior designer. And just to clarify a little bit, like the difference between a decorator and an interior designer, an interior designer usually does like large structural changes and works directly with an architect. So like taking out walls and like built-in furniture, that kind of stuff, while a decorator focuses on details. So I do basically furniture, soft furnishings like carpets and drapes. I do decorative items. I do lighting, paint, but so everything that is like detail oriented, but doesn't necessarily require large structural changes, which is great because what I do is also quite renter friendly. So it's a lot of things that you can do with your home that is just a makeover, but doesn't require to like really in-depth, doesn't require like in-depth renovation. So I have a background in fine arts. I used to work as an illustrator and for like 10 years or so. I did portraits and illustrated books and various other commission work. But after a while, especially after my son was born, I had like a lot less time on my hands and a lot more need of money. So I kind of had to shift a little bit. But it was an organic shift because both domains are very, they're like very visual. So like color theory applies just the same. Proportions and everything that has to do with why something is aesthetic applies just as well in fine arts as it does in design. So it was a very easy shift for me to go from a composition that is on a page to a composition that is basically a 3D space. Mm-hmm. I was always passionate about architecture and design, and I really loved hand making various objects. So it started out as a hobby. I would make decor items, I would sew things, make lamps, I upcycled furniture for a while, and I just like flipped this. I'd put it on either like Facebook Marketplace or I'd have like an Instagram account for this. And after a while, I just got, it just was easier to make a living doing this than it was doing illustration. It was just easier to find clients for it. Two of my friends decided to open up a restaurant, and they asked me if I want to help them decorate, like if I have any ideas on what to do with the space to make it like unique and cool and just like totally vibey. So they called me in, and that was my first big project, which was also the moment where I realized that I could really do this on a larger scale and I could really do this for a living. So I spent a couple of weeks with the girls, and we did the whole bistro. We were just like 4 girls, and we had one specialist helping us with certain aspects that we could not do, like electricity. But for the most part, we did it just the 4 of us, and it turned out really nice. So that was like a turning point where I was like, okay, I seriously need to start doing this on a more serious scale. And well, yeah, that's kind of how I started.
Okay.
Yeah.
You make it sound like it was really smooth and really easy to do this, but I'm not sure if it's for everybody. Like, could you tell us a little bit about what were the main obstacles, or what are the main obstacles for you for not to take a project or something that goes sideways?
Well, the transition for me personally was indeed quite smooth because I already had a lot of the knowledge, like in terms of understanding style and understanding various aesthetic directions people want to take. But I guess for most creatives, the most difficult part is the business aspect of it, like handling finances, handling taxes. People hire an accountant. Like, do not try to do this yourself. It'll not work out. If you're a creative, you will not be able to do it all. Plus, if you work as a freelancer, you're going to have to do the job of like 5 to 6 people all by yourself. So you're going to have marketing, you're going to have PR, you're going to have the actual design work, you're going to have implementation, you're going to have a lot of things to do just by yourself. So get help wherever you can. And yeah, don't do your own finances. That will bite you in the ass. So that was probably one of the toughest things for me to work out. Another thing that is really important to keep in mind is that whenever you work with people, you will meet people of various kinds and you will vibe with some of them. You will not vibe with others. The main criteria after which I pick my clients is whether or not we get along well. It doesn't matter how big the project is. It doesn't matter how well it pays. What matters is that we can sit down, have a nice talk about what they like, what they need, and just like resonate well, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
This is very important because if you do not like each other and if you do not understand what the other person wants, you're just going to hate each other for like 3-4 months, however much the reno is going to take. And nobody's going to be pleased with the result, and it's just going to be a disaster. So sit down with the person, really get to know them. Like if you work in people's homes, you go into their most intimate spaces. So you have to understand how a space is used and what that particular person or that particular family needs from that space. So there's also this social aspect to it where you really have to, I guess, become friends with the person fairly quickly, because they do have to share with you what they do throughout the day and what they need from a space and what they would like. And you have to get a pretty good grasp of their personal taste. Most people do not have like the design words to explain to you what the direction and style is that they would like. So you kind of have to base this on your intuition. Like if you're lucky, you get reference photos. But a lot of people are like, well, I don't know. And then you kind of have to get that out of them. And this social aspect of it is like a very make and break aspect of the whole situation.
It's not really very technical. I mean, the talk with the clients, as you told me, you don't really get the type of clients that know exactly what they want and how they want it, but you have to get that yourself.
It really depends on the client. So there are some people who, like, I had clients who were like, okay, you're the third designer I'm talking to. I know exactly what I want. And they did not know how to deliver it. I like those type of clients. If you know what you want, it makes my job so much easier to just be able to deliver exactly what you want, because you're able to define that. There's a lot of people who are like, well, I don't really know. May come up with some ideas and then we'll see, which makes my job a lot harder because there's a lot of improvising. There's a lot of like tapping around in the dark and hoping that whatever I come up with is going to somehow be in the same direction as what they want, which often is not. And then I have to start over, and that's very frustrating. So yeah, I like the clients very much who know what they want. And there also is a technical aspect to it, because our conversations also start with a bunch of technical aspects that have to do with the space itself, like how much light it gets, what the orientation is, how many windows there are, there's a bunch of like little details that I have to make sure that I cover so that the end result is going to be professional looking and is going to be nice. But there's also just the part where I get to know them and what they need, and that one is not very technical. It's very social.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned the first project as being the bistro project. But I want to ask you about the first project you took on yourself, because the first one was basically the turnaround point. And what was the next project after that? Like the first project you took on from scratch, just by yourself?
Just by myself. That was a living room and a bedroom for a family.
Okay.
So
how did that feel like?
It was a little scary, but it was challenging in an enjoyable way. Like it was something that I genuinely enjoyed doing. And it was a person that I got along very well with from the get-go. And that helped a lot. Just they had faith in me. They were all very kind and very nice, and also very open about what they need and what they like. So it was a little overwhelming, and there was a lot of things that I had to just learn as I go or as I went. But it was immensely satisfying.
Okay, and since we're on the projects list, what's the biggest project yet? What's the greatest project that you've done?
Greatest in terms of size, or in terms of like that is a tough one, because for the most part I work with families, like either young families moving into a new home, or people expecting children who want to who need to shift the way the space is used so that it's more practical. But I also sometimes get a lot of weird things. Like I do a couple of offices. I just did a dentist's office last week. That was really odd and really outside my not comfort zone, but just outside of whatever I usually do. So it had to be, so the specifics of it were very different, because everything you had to be able to sterilize. And there were just a couple of like technical things that you really needed to make sure that you get right, which I knew basically nothing about. But also it was an dentist office where they treat a lot of kids. So I wanted to have like a little fun twist. So that was very nice to take a sterile space as a dentist office and combine it with something that is very playful and fun and calming, and just not like cliche bunny poster or something. Mm-hmm. So that was interesting. But like scale wise, I guess the largest would be the situations where I had to do like an entire house, like 3 bedrooms, living room, bathrooms, open space, kitchen, everything. Those are hard to do because there are so many spaces and so many things happening in parallel that you have to make sure that you get right. And then it also has to be cohesive, but like the various different spaces have to have a personality of their own.
That's what I wanted to ask you now. When you have like a big project like this, like a full house, I know that it's a little bit harder because of the scale of it, but isn't it easier because you are the one who's designing the whole thing, like not only individual? Because I suppose when you meet with a client and they want to decorate a room, you have to keep track of how's everything else decorated in the house, and you have to fit your own design into something that's already there. When you take a project like this, like a full space, a full house, is it easier for you to just design from one to another and to make them look nice together?
I don't know if it is easier. I don't know if it is easier because oftentimes seeing how the rest of the house is decorated kind of gives me an idea of what those people like. Like seeing the items that they picked for themselves in the rest of the house or apartment gives me an idea over what they would like to have happen in that room that I am decorating. And yeah, sometimes they end up in a situation in which that is like the nice room and then there's the rest of the house. But that's okay because that's how you get callbacks. But I guess the most difficult part if you do like a whole house or a larger space is just the sheer scale of things. Like you have to, everything is happening simultaneously. Because usually I have a lot of projects running in parallel, but they're at different stages. So I know that here we have to take care of the paint, and there we have to take care of the furniture, and we're at soft furnishings and decor. So it's not necessarily the same thing that you have to do across a million rooms. Because if you have to find furniture for like 5 to 6 spaces simultaneously because they don't want to do 6 different furniture orders, they don't want to order separately for all the rooms, that is massive. That we are looking at thousands of pages of furniture. That part gets crazy. So just the scale. But design wise, I don't know if it's necessarily harder or easier. It's just more, I guess.
I just wanted to ask you, but you sort of already answered this one. If you have openness towards office or other spaces, you just told me. But do you plan to have like a distinct entity that's handling only office or retail or industrial spaces?
That sounds like something that might happen if I grow my business a lot. So currently I am running under the Maisonera brand just because I am too shy of a person to do this under my own name. Okay. I want to have like a brand I can hide behind. That is comforting, but I am pretty much the main person here. So there's no other designer, and everyone and every other person I involve in the progress and the projects, they're basically contractors, and they like vary from project to project. So it's basically more or less all me. And I have pretty much specialized at this point doing family homes. This is my thing. That is basically the target group that I have reached, and that's where I managed to like find my niche. But in the future, if I do end up growing my business to a level where it's like a big ass company, I might do that.
So I know you're based in Romania right now. Do you work abroad as well? Do you have like international clients?
Not at the moment, but I do have clients who are like not in my city. So I have done a lot of projects that were strictly online, which poses their own complications, but it is perfectly doable. So provided if there is someone, but currently the brand is not really known outside of the country. So, but if there were to be people who need my help who are outside of the country, I could just as well work with them, just like I did with people who are not in my city.
Okay, I see. And that was another thing I really wanted to touch base on. Are you able to do this kind of makeovers or renovations without you physically being there?
Remotely, it poses its own challenges, but it is possible to work remotely, or at least remotely for the most part. So I am able to do to make up a plan to do like a design based solely on photographs and specs. So if I get like accurate measurements of a space, if I get sufficient reference photos that are shot from the right angles, so if I get a good enough of a grasp of what the space looks like in theory, I am able to put together a design that will look good, is cohesive, and will fit. But there's always little things that you tweak along the way as you go. Because maybe in the space, if like on paper it looks okay, or in the design it looks okay, but maybe in the space you realize maybe this looks better on that wall, or maybe you shift things up, or small details might change as you go along. And those are the situations that might pose complications because I am not there to spot them on time. And sometimes they get spotted later on, or sometimes the client is like, oh my God, what are we going to do? But that's fine. You just call me, we solve it. Everything has a solution. And oftentimes when there is a need for my physical presence, I just like go there over the weekend or something. So I do a short visit and we plan every step of the process that requires my presence necessarily, that requires me to be there necessarily. Do we plan that for that same weekend or for those 2 days, or as much as I'm staying there, and then we can sort it out in person. But for the most part, it is doable online. I guess the biggest complication, or the complication I have most often, is people sending me photos of stuff or of paint chips or that kind of thing, and thinking that from that photo, I will be able to tell if that is okay or not. People do not send me photos of paint, please. Paint in photos does not look like paint on walls. It will never look like paint on walls. It's not gonna. I need to see, like, if it's a thing of colors or textures, I probably will have to see it in person. So just like send me the code and I can go to my own local hardware store and check it out for myself. Don't send me pictures. Your white balance gonna be off. Not gonna look the same.
Okay, so as we're closing this episode, are there any advice that you can shout out to fellow fine artists that are maybe too shy to step on and take their own business, or why not to our audience who's looking for someone who can decorate their places?
To my fellow creatives out there, I want to tell you that it is a lot of work. So if you are worried about being up for the challenge of doing this as a freelancer or doing this on your own, there's no problem with just getting hired for or applying for a job for a while and just working for someone until you are sure enough that you can do this on your own, because it is a lot of work. Second advice is that get help where you can. So if there are aspects that you are not particularly good at, like accounting, which I've mentioned previously, get an accountant. The requirement is not for you to be good at absolutely everything. You don't have to be the person who is perfectly good at everything. There are technically specialized people who you can ask help from. So do not worry about telling your clients that you don't know how to do this or that. Just tell them, I would rather consult a specialist because they know more than I do. Everybody's going to be fine with that. So, yeah. And what else? Yeah, a lot of people are going to tell you that you're not going to make it. You're going to need to learn to ignore that and do that anyway, because it is immensely satisfying to do well after a bunch of people told you that you most likely won't be able to do it.
Yeah, it's really satisfying to be able to tell someone, you told me so, and I proved you wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much, Zsu, for taking the time to have a chat with us, to share your experience to the world. Thank you to our audience, wherever you're tuning in from. Don't forget to subscribe to all our channels, and see you next week.
Thank you for joining. Be sure to check back next week for the next HIPTHER Talks, and subscribe on Amazon Music, Overcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Mixcloud, and Pandora.